Hey, in this tutorial I'm going to do kind of a quick orientation of Revit as well as show you some tools and ways to lay out your house project. It's not going to be exactly the dimensions and everything you need for the tiny house, but it does give you an overview of the tools, and then you'll be using that to create your house. So first thing that we're going to do is create a new. Click on new when this thing opens up, and you are going to not use the construction template. Hit the drop down and go to architectural template. If you didn't open it this way, just make sure you're hitting architectural template if you decide you're going to click on the single link there as well. Create new project, and what'll open up for you is kind of the platform that you'll be working in. Over here is where you're going to be doing your creating, and you're going to see your image as you build your house. Up top you want to have a properties box that as you click on different tools, the properties will switch for the tools that you have selected. So I just clicked on wall, and then I get properties for the wall. I'm going to hit escape twice to let go of that wall tool. And then down here is your project browser. So as you click on different levels, you have floor plan, level 1, level 2, and then you have your east, north, south, west elevations. And then the other view that you're going to be clicking on as you work through this is up here at the top, and that will be your 3D view. It looks like a little doghouse. So let's get started. We are going to begin with laying out some walls. I'm going to click on the wall tool up here, and when I click on that, you'll notice all of this stuff changes, including this modify place wall. So these are basically drawing tools. So I got a line tool and a rectangle tool. There's some other shapes as well, but I'm going to stick with those two tools. And as I click and drag, I have the line tool right now. As I click and drag, I can just click and I can draw kind of the profile of a house. And when I have it closed off, that completes the rectangle. If I hold the Alt button down and scroll my mouse wheel forward, or if I don't hold the Alt button down and scroll forward and backwards, it'll allow me to zoom in. Alright, if I chose, I'm going to hit the escape button a couple times. If I chose to lay out this wall differently, I'm going to select all of that and delete it. I'm going to show you another way to do it. Click on wall. You can click on the rectangle tool, and on the rectangle tool you can simply just drag a rectangle out and click on the other side, and you will get your rectangle. Alright, when we do the wall, you'll see that it's a double line, and that's the thickness of the wall. This particular wall, if we look over on the properties, is a generic 8-inch wall. We're going to be defining what's made up in that wall here in a second. Alright, the first thing that I want to do is give dimensions to these walls. Right now I still have the wall tool selected, so I'm going to hit escape 2 times to let go of it, and I'm going to click this top wall up here. You can see it highlight blue. If I click on it, the dimensions over here are basically the dimensions of how far that wall is away from the wall across from it. And I'm going to change that to be, I'm going to make 15 and hit enter. So now that wall is 15 feet away. So that's basically saying that this wall length is 15 feet. Okay, I'm going to click on this wall, and what you're going to see is it flips over to how far away that wall is from the wall across from it. And I'm going to choose 20, I'm going to make this 22 feet 4 inches. And you can see you have a little apostrophe for the feet symbol and the quotation marks for the inch symbol. So how I enter 22 feet, and then I'm going to hit the space bar, 4 inches. So 22 space 4, and hit enter, and now I have a 22 feet 4 inches wall, and then I can zoom in on it a little bit more to be able to see it. So that wall is 15 feet away from that wall, and this wall is 22 feet 4 inches away from that wall. I just made those two numbers up. They mean nothing other than just parameters for this little sample house that we're going to do. Okay, now this wall, if I click on the 3D view up here, you will see I've got this box and it's raised up in the air in 3 dimensions. All right, the height of this box, or the height of this wall, is determined by the wall properties. So I'm going to select a wall, and you can see the wall properties. This says that the base constraint, the bottom of the wall, is set to level 1, and the top constraint is unconnected to any level. So let's see where those levels are. So down here in my project browser, I'm going to click on one of these elevations. I'll click on the north elevation, and you can see we're looking at this thing from the side. So if we were standing on the ground level looking at the side of the wall, it would look like this. And here's our levels, level 1 and level 2. I can change this level by clicking on that, and I can change it. I can change it to 12 feet, and the line moves up a little bit. All right, if I go back to my floor plan view, which is looking at my floor from up above, and select all of those walls, I can choose my top constraint. Instead of being unconnected, I can choose that to be up to level 2 and apply. Okay, now when I go back to my north elevation view, what you'll see is that wall now stops right at that 12-foot or level 2 mark. And when I click on the 3D view, you'll see that that is a little bit shorter, shorter rectangular box. All right, so that's how you can change the height of your walls by changing the levels in your elevation view, and then changing your constraint. All right, now let's look at these walls actually individually and build what these walls are going to be made out of. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan. Most of the drawing that I do is in the floor plan level, and most of it's going to be done on level 1 or the bottom level. Okay, I'm going to select all these walls again, and up here it tells me what kind of wall it is. It's a generic 8-inch, and there's a drop down here that will allow me to select all of these different wall types. Okay, but we're going to actually build the wall out of certain materials, so let me show you how to do that. With this basic wall on here, I'm going to click on Edit Type. Before I start editing, I'm going to create a duplicate wall. When I duplicate it, it allows me to rename it. So I'm just going to rename this Tiny House Exterior, EXT for exterior outside wall, and click OK. So that changes the type, and then I'm going to hit Edit for the structure, and I'm going to build my wall right in here. So right now I have 8 inches of just generic nothing, but if I click on this by category and hit the box with the 3 dots, it'll pull up kind of a catalog of different materials. And my wall, the structure is going to be 2x4 lumber. So I'm going to search for lumber, and softwood lumber pops up. I'm going to click on that and click OK. So now my material changes to softwood lumber, and a 2x4 is actually 3.5 inches wide. It's not 4 inches, it's 3.5 inches. And that's going to be the structure, or what's called the stud thickness of my wall. On top of that, I'm going to insert a layer on top of it. And if I click here and say insert, it'll put another category above my softwood lumber. And above, if we look up here, is exterior side, and if we look below it, it's interior side, so we can see the layers moving from the inside towards the outside of the wall. So I'm going to click on by category, and I'm going to change that to be plywood, because on top of the studs, plywood sheathing is screwed down. So I'm going to click plywood, and plywood happens to be, in this case, I'm going to make it 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch when I hit enter. All right, I'm going to insert another material on top of that, because I don't want my house to look like a plywood box. So I'm going to look for siding. So if I click siding up here, nothing is found. So here's what we do. We're going to go down here to this little circle with a plus sign on it, and I'm going to click on that and create new material. So this new default new material, if I right click, it'll allow me to rename it, and I'm going to rename this siding. That way we can paint, we can texture what the outside of our house is going to look like. So I'm going to call this siding, and then over here where it says shading, I'm going to click on that gray box, and instead of gray, I want this to be kind of a bright or a lighter blue color. Okay, you can choose any color in here that you like for it to be, and click OK. That's going to be the color of the outside of my house. Alright, so I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to give that siding a thickness. If you forget to give the siding a thickness, it will give you an error message and says that it needs to be given a thickness. So I'm going to create a 0.5 thickness for my siding. Alright, I'm going to insert another layer, and you notice it puts it on the top or the exterior side of my siding. Well, I don't want it to be there. I actually want this layer to be on the inside of my stud wall. So I'm going to hit down until that new material is underneath softwood, and I'm going to make this my drywall. So drywall is going to be on the inside of my house. So search for drywall. It's also given the name gypsum wallboard, and click OK. This also is a thickness of 0.5 inches. So I got 0.5 inches, OK, and OK. So now if we look over here in the preview, you can see that wall's kind of changed a little bit because it's got a bunch of different materials built up. But if we look here, it shows pretty much just the two lines to designate the box. But that's only because the detail level. So down here we have a rectangle and a 3D rectangle. If I click on the rectangle, right now it defaults to coarse. I can change that to fine. So in this view, as I zoom in now, I can see the different layers of the materials I just built in that wall. Okay, I'm going to click on the box, and this will give me my visual style, and I'm going to click on shaded. The lower graphics up to the more fine, realistic graphics. I'm going to pick the one in the middle, shaded, but you can start to see some colors there. Okay, we might look at it a little bit more detailed later, but that's perfect for right now. All right, at this point, that's a good place to stop this video. Just laying out your basic exterior walls.